A very good evening to all the participants. Thank you, sir, for the excellent presentation. And it was covering all the different aspects of intellectual property and intellectual property rights. And it was very simplistically designed and lucidly presented. Thank you so much, sir. There are a few questions in the chat box which I will put before you, sir, so that you can please clarify the same. Sir, there is a question with respect to the Sci-Hub case. So this is by Jyotsna CS regarding the DU photocopying case and IPR. Could you kindly elaborate a little in relation to the Sci-Hub case, which is now pending before the Delhi High Court, sir?
I think I'll get back to her. I'm not, fully conversant with the case. I'll definitely get back to her.
Yes, sir. So there is another question from Advocate Ammu S. Can you please give a brief understanding regarding biopiracy in India? And is there any law or remedies taken from the part of the authorities?
A very good question, ma'am.
As far as the biological, piracy or biopiracy is concerned, there was a case in the beginning of the, this century, wherein certain scientists, one from Czechoslovakia and one from other country, he was not a scientist, in fact, he was a broker. These two people were found in possession of hundreds and thousands of, moths, beetles, butterflies, some dead and most of them alive. And they were prosecuted under the Biological Diversity Act for, trying to export them out of the country. And Biological Diversity Act is the only act which can be used to contain biopiracy. There have been the cases of Indian crabs. There have been the cases of Ongole bull. There have been the cases of Indian tarantula, the spider, giant spiders in Borra caves of Visakhapatnam district, where attempts were made to export them by foreigners. In one case, a German visitor to Visakhapatnam staying in a hotel, he was claiming that he was writing a book on Indian spiders, but actually he was offering about 50,000 to 1 lakh rupees to a blue striped Indian spider. And ultimately it was found that this man was using them as ornamental things in other countries by selling them, and was also trying to, in fact, export the venom of the spider, which could be used for a certain rare, diseases treatment. So these are some of the instances. But one case was Peter Swacha's case, which I mentioned in, West Bengal, in Darjeeling area. So subsequently, we have not come across many successful attempts. Only we could prevent, we could not punish those, who indulged in it. The reason is this: there are, certain mega biodiverse countries. India is one of them. Therefore, for foreigners and others, it becomes a very easy target, and they try to, indulge in this kind of biopiracy.
The next question is from Mr. Ritvik. Respected sir, I want to ask you, that is the process or procedure could also be protected under IPR?
Certainly. In fact, I said in the beginning of this lecture that inventions can be patented. And when we are talking about the inventions, they may be in the form of products or processes. Process also includes a kind of procedure, methodology. But if this process is novel, useful, and non-obvious, and if it amounts to invention, it can always be patented, or else it can be kept as a trade secret also. But there is an availability of protection under the Patents Act of 1970.
Yes, thank you, sir. Another question from Mr. Chinmay Panchal. I request sir to comment on the interface of artificial intelligence and IPR and its future impact.
Yeah, it's a great question, because it is a contemporary and burning issue. There are two things here. One, whether you are looking at artificial intelligence as a result of intellectual property or as an entity itself which is creating intellectual property. But there are instances in United States of America, China, Japan, and even some of the European countries. There was a case called Daubus case, which was filed in before the European patent office, where the claim for inventing intellectual property was rejected. Similar thing happened in the case of Australia. But when we are using artificial intelligence in medical diagnostics and others, and maybe even for the purpose of HR practices, human resources practices, certainly many innovative things are being produced. But as of now, artificial intelligence has not been held to be the competent owner of intellectual property rights. But in future, AI also probably might be the owner. That is what the Daubus case is all about. I would suggest to the participant to refer to the Daubus cases in 3 different parts of the world, in UK, Europe, and probably in Australia, recent one.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is another question from Jyotsna. Jyotsna is done. So it is from Prakhar. How can the law fraternity do its bit to empower the legally illiterate of their IPRs?
Okay. In fact, the law fraternity can do so many things in sensitizing those who are not aware of the intellectual property, their own intellectual property, others' intellectual property. In fact, there are number of myths in the field of intellectual property. As I said in the beginning, many people think that intellectual property means only patents, which is not correct. There are 7 other forms of intellectual property. Second thing is that, at least in the field of copyright, many people think that one can copy hundreds of pages, and ultimately what they say is that we are acknowledging the source. Attribution is there, therefore there is no copyright violation, which is not correct. Because just by attributing, we cannot escape from copyright infringement. We have to quote less, we have to attribute, that's different issue. So there are number of myths which we encounter today. Many of them are not aware. A traditional Vaidya may not be, aware of the traditional knowledge protection. Even though he may not be in a position to exploit it, or he is willing or not willing, he can prevent others from exploiting the same. This is another important facet. Same is the case with traditional weavers. Same is the case with, our own students. That's the reason why people say that the awareness levels must start improving right from the primary school level and in unorganized area. For example, I had an experience of conducting research in Northeast, in 8 Northeastern states, about the intellectual property in traditional handlooms, handicrafts, even basketry, puppetry, painting, so on and so forth, right? And ultimately, we came out with the finding that many of the stakeholders are not aware of their rights, and simply, they were taken away, they were exploited by big companies, multinational corporations. Same is the case with handloom weavers. So instead of handlooms, machine looms are used, right? And when machine looms are projecting their products as handloom products, certainly intellectual property comes into picture. So there are many ways and means. Come out with a small booklet, come out with a small video, or organize. For example, in Pochampalli Ikat case, more than 30 families got positively affected by protecting their rights more. So we can start somewhere. Certainly the awareness levels will increase. Thank you.
It is a general question, sir, with respect to how to strengthen IPRs. Are there any related cases or instances as to how this can be done efficiently?
Okay. Yeah. In fact, Indian government has taken a very good policy decision in 2016 by coming out with National Intellectual Property Policy. Second important aspect is that many of the authorities themselves, maybe intellectual property offices authorities are aware of the IPR regimes, but many others may not be really aware of these intellectual property potentialities and the advantages. This is one important aspect. So how to strengthen people's participation is necessary. I will give one example. People's biodiversity registers are, village biodiversity registers. We call them, PBRs and all. In fact, in every village, there may be some kind of biodiversity. A register has to be maintained, right? And when there is a networking of these registers, it will be very easy to protect the traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge, right? And we can prevent others from commercially exploiting the same. Same thing happened in the case of Hoodia cactus somewhere in, South Africa. How a particular tribal community used this particular product, herbal product, as an element to stave off hunger. How this was taken away by the government after so many years, how it was licensed to Pfizer company, how Pfizer company licensed it to Phytoform, a biotechnology company, how it has become, in fact, a bioslimmer. The tribal people who went on the hunting, they used to eat this to prevent the hunger and thirst for maybe 3 or 4 days together. But the same thing became a bioslimming agent for obese people now. In the process, what happened? The original stakeholders of the traditional knowledge were not given any benefit. With lot of efforts, they could get something only during the last 5-10 years. So there are many success stories like this, but only thing is involvement of all the stakeholders is absolutely necessary. This is important. It is not only the property of enlightened people, but also the grassroots level people, and they have to be made aware of their rights and protections. Sir.
Sir, there are 3 more queries, if you permit.
Sure. Please,
yes.
please, Ken.
Yes, sir. So, query from Chinmay Panchal. Another doubt he is asking, sir. So, as to how can the time that goes on in getting a patent be reduced? He is of the opinion that patent grant takes immense time.
You are right. And in fact, this is one of the discouraging factors. And there was a saying in the good old days that average time taken for grant of patent was 108 weeks. So 108 weeks means how many years? 9 years. Now it has been reduced to a great extent. Reason is even the Patents Act, patent rules have been amended. Now there is a provision for even early examination. One need not wait for 48 months, right? And the second thing is people are also making use of the PCT procedure, the Patent Cooperation Treaty procedure, to acquire patents in other countries, which will reduce certain timelines. This is another important point. Third one is that IP offices need to be strengthened. We need more examiners, more scientific advisors, right? And opposition boards must be constituted on time. And I think the governments of the day should, in fact, focus on strengthening the IP offices in terms of not only the physical infrastructure but also human infrastructure. Then, coupled with certain steps like the PCT and all, people need not wait. For example, today I am filing an application with provisional specification. Why should I wait for 12 months? Some people wait till the end of 12 months, then only they file. That's not the case, no. We can reduce by 6 months or so. So certain reforms are necessary, but I think even the stakeholders are also equally, in fact, responsible for reducing the timelines. That can be done. Now it is no more 108 months, sir. It is much less, much less.
The next question is from Mopur Prasad. Are WIPO guidelines in force under the Indian legislations with respect to intellectual property rights?
Yeah, it's a good question. WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization based at Geneva, has been in existence since 1967. It became a body of UN in 1970. Today, it administers more than 28 treaties, including the Paris Convention, the Berne Convention, the Patent Cooperation Treaty, the Madrid Agreement, so on and so forth. And India has been a party to many of the important conventions which are administered by WIPO. WIPO itself can't give guidelines, sir. WIPO's purpose is to administer, and sometimes it may conduct its own research, it may offer its own programs, it may facilitate some kind of understanding between WTO and itself. Fact-finding missions are conducted. But as far as the WIPO administered treaties are concerned, India has been a signatory to many of them, including the Paris Convention, the Berne Convention, the Madrid Agreement, the Patent Cooperation Treaty, the Hague Convention, so on and so forth. And to a great extent, TRIPS is not part of the WIPO. TRIPS is part of the WTO. That also we have totally complied with by 2005, please.
Next question from CS Ravi Raghavan Kotla. What is the scope of litigation and overcoming solutions in artificial intelligence world where information is abundantly and available and use of such information results in plagiarism? So probably it is relating to plagiarism and also artificial intelligence.
Now, as of now, unless we have data protection law, bill is there in its place. We have to make use of copyright, because when you talk about the literary, work, it includes computer, in fact, programs, databases, and compilations. If you are talking about those databases, violation of the copyright in those databases, certainly only copyright law can be brought into, utility or force now or application. If there is a data protection law, then we can integrate copyright and data protection. Probably artificial intelligence created data or stored data also can be made use of. As of now, it is not artificial intelligence created data, but it is the company which owns the data or which creates or makes use of the artificial intelligence.
A question from Advocate S. Tulsiram. Is the remedy of passing off available to unregistered plant varieties or plant genetic materials, like in the case of other intellectual property?
In fact, passing off is typically available only in the area of trademarks. But there are enough remedies under the Plant Varieties, Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act. And certainly, passing off phenomenon is addressed under that. You may not call it passing off, and there are remedies. And relevant sections can be looked at, maybe section 41 or 42.
This is also from Advocate Tulsiram. Presently, the movies generally are not copyrighted, but they are protected through registration of movie under Cinema Act. Would it be considered as vital inputs of IP protection for passing off and infringement remedies? So the person is under the impression that it is
movies cannot be copyrighted.
Yes.
Mr. Tulsiram must be knowing that copyright itself, cinematograph film, is one of the subject matters of copyright protection under section 13 of the Copyright Act. Therefore, the question of not protecting the cinema under the copyright doesn't arise. First point. If you are referring to some cinema titles and all, that is Producers Council and many others. They are mostly, in fact, some kind of self-regulated mechanism. Normally, one-liners, etc., cannot be copyrighted. There, they have their own mechanism where the name also can be protected, and then any person who makes use of that name, and if that name is unique, etc., certainly it becomes the in fact, subject matter of litigation as well as protection. And before I wind up, Dr. Irfan, I would like to answer Mr. Devendra. He is saying whether there can be a state copyright, a state IPR, state granted IPR under the scheme of our constitution. all the intellectual property rights are in the exclusive domain of the central legislature, sir. That is Parliament. So the question of states granting IPRs doesn't arise. Ultimately, it must be through the national offices concerned.
Sir, there is also another question which is of very current development. The abolition of IPAB, sir. What is the impact of abolition of IPAB? Are our judges fully trained in IPR laws to dispose the matters filed before them? This is from CS Ravi Raghavan Kotla, sir. So this will be the last question.
Sure, sure. Mr. Ravi Raghavan, you know very well that at least the members of the IPAB were supposed to be experts. Maybe the judicial members are technical members. But our judges are not supposed to be experts in every case relating to intellectual property rights. I personally feel that unnecessarily IPAB has been abolished because of the stringent opposition from certain quarters. But, in fact, it could have been, retained with certain reforms, as I mentioned in the beginning, by empowering it, by increasing its manpower, by giving more infrastructure, right? Now, the impact is that, again, the courts are overburdened. I don't know, because if there is Justice Pratibha Singh in every high court, there will not be any problem because she is an expert in IPRs. She is in Delhi High Court. But how many Pratibha Singhs are there? This is the problem. Even today, many people don't know how to use copyright and copyrights, patents and many others. So therefore, certainly, I personally feel that abolition of IPAB is a retrograde step. It has certainly increased the burden of courts, but unfortunately, all the judges are not fully equipped.
Mr. A. Srinivas Rao is also associated in organizing of this weekly series and has contributed extensively in developing the videos for the YouTube channel of the IPR chair. We request all the participants to kindly subscribe to our channel for regular updates and also give your comments on the videos that are uploaded there.
All, I thank Dr. Irfan Abbas. I thank Mr. A. Srinivas Rao, an IPR attorney and an LLM in intellectual property rights from Usman University, for their never-ending cooperation in making this DPIIT mission a success in the beginning, and we hope to continue this endeavor for years to come. I request all of you to subscribe to this channel and in fact contribute in your own way, and we are very confident of creating platforms for each one of you in the form of blogs as well, where you can contribute some original ideas. I thank my colleagues, both of them, Dr. Irfan and Mr. Srinivas Rao, Mr. Nagaraju, and I thank all of you for participating in such a good number at this point of time, and it gives us a lot of inspiration and encouragement. Thank you one and all. Thank you very much.